this video, we're going to look at Emmet. I'll demonstrate what it can do, how it can help you, and why it's awesome. Stick around to the end and I'll show you how to create custom Emmet snippets. Emmet dramatically speeds up your workflow when writing HTML and CSS. It's an abbreviation syntax that allows you to write code quickly. Now, Emmet is built into VS Code, but it's not exclusive to VS Code. You can use Emmet with other code editors. So here on emmet.io, if we go to download, you can use Emmet with Sublime Text, Atom, and other popular code editors. Another great resource on the site under documentation is a cheat sheet. It is even downloadable as a PDF. This cheat sheet goes over everything that you can do with Emmet, and it's very extensive. I'm not going to cover everything on here, but you can see there is a lot to Emmet. So let's jump into it and see what it can do. So the first thing that you see me do in just about every video is we create a boilerplate in HTML. So to do that with Emmet, we simply type an exclamation mark, and then you see this pop-up that says Emmet abbreviation. And if we hit enter, then you'll see the boilerplate, and it has tab stops in it. So we can tab through and edit certain portions of this boilerplate. So generally, I will just tab to the title, and then we'll change that. And then if I hit tab again, we go to the body, and now we're ready to type some code. So with Emmet, we can do basic tags very easily. So if I wanted a div, I could simply type div and then hit enter, and I have my opening and closing div tags. And you see that the cursor is now in the middle, and I'm ready to type within the div tags as well. We could also add an H1 and enter, same thing, a paragraph, or a section. This will work with any tag. Now certain tags have abbreviations. So for instance, block quote, instead of typing out block quote, we could just type BQ, enter, and now we have block quote. We could do the same thing with header, HDR, and there's our header. Same thing with footer, FTR, and with section we can do SECT, and we have our section. So that's really simple, but usually when we are typing tags, we have classes and IDs and other attributes that we want to add, and we can do that inline as well. So if we wanted to add a class to our div, we could type div. So just as in CSS, when we type in our classes, they start with a period. So we'll type .myClass, and then enter, and we have a div with the class of myClass. We can also add multiple classes at one time. So if we have an H1 and we have class 1, we can just simply type period again and class 2, and then hit enter, and now we have our H1 with two classes. For IDs, we can type div and then hashtag myID. And that gives us our div tag with the ID of myID. We can also combine these, and we can create a div with the ID of myID, and then we could give it the class of myClass. We can also add content. So if we have a paragraph and we want to add the content right here in line, we would use curly braces, and then we can just type in the content. This is a paragraph. And then hit enter, and we have our paragraph. We can also add siblings. So if we have a div and we also want a paragraph, we can just type plus and then P, and then if we also want a block quote after that, plus BQ, and now we have our div, our paragraph, and our block quote. And we can also nest objects. So let's say we have a nav, and then to nest we would use the greater than symbol, and then within the nav we'll have a UL, and then another greater than symbol. Within the UL we'll have an LI. And there we go, it creates our structure for us. We can also add on the content if we wanted, and we can just say item 1, enter, and now we have our structure along with the content of the LI. We can go a little bit further and combine everything that we've learned so far. We could create a section, and with a class of main section, and then within that we want an H1 with the class of title, and we want the content of that to be my title. And then we want to add a sibling after the H1, so we'll hit plus. We want to add a paragraph with the class of body, and then we'll enter the body text here. And then enter, and we have our entire section, H1, and paragraph all exactly how we want it very quickly. Now, when you're dealing with nesting and multiple levels, you have to be able to move around those levels. So there is something called climb up. So to demonstrate that, let's say we have a div, and then after that div, we'll have a sibling with another div. Within that div, we want a paragraph, and then a span. Within the span, we want an EM. And now we want to add a block quote on the same level as the span. So we don't want it to be within the span, we want it to be a sibling to the span. So in order to go up a level, we can use the caret symbol, and then we'll add our block quote. Now if we wanted that block quote to be on the same level as the paragraph, so a sibling to the paragraph, we could go back here and add another caret, and that will move it up 2 levels now. If we hit enter, now you'll see that the block quote is a sibling to the paragraph. Another way to traverse the levels is called grouping. So we could take that same example, and then instead of using the climb up carets, we could include this part here in a group. So to do that, we use parentheses. So we'll surround that as a group, and then we can add our block quote. So we'll say plus BQ, and that is going to insert the block quote as a sibling to the top level divs. Another example of grouping, we could say main, and then within the main, we want a section. Within the section, we want an H1, and a paragraph, and a button. But then we want to add another section. So we could include this section in a group, and then add another section. And there we go. Another cool feature of Emmet is multiplication. So a common example of this is a UL. Within the UL, we have LI, and we want to have 5 of them. So we can use the multiplication asterisk and then any number. And now we'll have a UL with 5 LIs. Now just creating the structure is nice, but to add on to that all of the classes and content would be great as well. A lot of times you want to number them in sequence. So we can even do that with Emmet. So for instance, if we said UL and then the LI within that, and then we have the content of item 1, and we want that 5 times, we're going to have item 1 5 times, but we want that to be numbered in sequence. So what we can do is change this 1 here to a dollar symbol. And the dollar symbol will represent the index. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we can do that as well on classes or IDs. So if we add to this dot item and then dollar symbol, this will work as well. So now we have class item 1 through 5, and then the content item 1 through 5. If for some reason you don't want to start with 1, we can start at any number. So if we want the content to start with item 3, we could say @3, and that will start it at item 3. You can even reverse the order of the index. Check out the cheat sheet to see how to do that. So another thing that we can add is attributes. So let's say we have a paragraph and we want to add the title. So for attributes, we use square brackets, and then we enter the attribute name and then the value. And there you go. Now with an anchor, if we hit A and then enter, it's going to automatically give us the href attribute. So certain tags have attributes that are required, and those will automatically be entered. But let's say that we want to add the target. So we could say A, and then you'll see that these pop up here. We have blank, link, mail, and telephone. So if we hit :blank, that one will give us our href, our target, and our rel. There are certain tags that are implicit, so we don't have to actually type them. And the first one is a div. We can say div.class, and that works just fine. But we could also not type div. We could just type .class. It's going to implicitly add a div tag with the class of class. Another example, we could have an EM, and within the EM, we just type .class. And that's going to give us a span with the class of class within our EM. Another one would be a UL. And within the UL, it's going to implicitly understand that we're going to want an LI. And the last example of this is a table. Of course, within a table, it's going to know that we're going to want a table row. And within the table row, it's going to know that we want a column. All right, let's move on to forms and inputs. So if we type form, we're going to get our action. Sometimes we want to also specify the method. So we could say form get, and that's going to also add our action along with our method. And we can also say form : post, and that will add the method of post. We can add a label by typing label, and it will automatically add the for attribute. We can type input, and then you'll see here in our suggestions there are a ton of different inputs. And we can select any of these. By default, it is going to be a text input, but we could also say B for button, or we could type out button, either way. We can also add a select by typing select. Another thing that we can add is dummy text. So that's called Lorem Ipsum. So if we just type lorem and then hit enter, it's going to give us a paragraph of dummy text. We can also specify how many words that we want. So we could say lorem 20, and that's going to give us 20 words of random text. So an example of using this along with our structures, we can have a UL with the class of myList. Within the UL, we can add some lorem, and let's just add 4 words of lorem, and then add a class to that of item, and do that 5 times. And there we go, we have a list with our LIs, with the class of item, and some dummy text. Another example of an advanced structure would be a paragraph, and then within the paragraph, let's add some content, and we'll say click, and then space, close out our curly brace. Along with that text, we also want to add an anchor with the text of here. And then along with that, we want to add some more text, space, to continue, then hit enter, and we have our paragraph, and it says click here to continue, and here is wrapped in an anchor. Next, let's look at the CSS capabilities of Emmet. So I'm going to select the body, and then within the body, if we want to add a color, we could simply type C and then the color. If it's black, for instance, we could just do C #0, and it will enter all zeros. We could say C #F, and it's going to enter all Fs for white. We could also do a light gray by doing C #F4, and it will automatically add the rest of the F4s. We can add padding by typing P and then colon and then adding whatever padding. So we could say 10. And it's going to default to pixels. If we wanted to do something other than pixels, we can just specify that. If we want %, just type %. We can also, instead of typing the %, you could type P. If we wanted EM, you could just simply type E, or rem, R. For specific padding, we could type, so padding right would be PR, padding left would be PL, and so on. We can do the same thing with margin. We'd say margin 20 pixels, or we could say margin right, margin left, and so on. We could set our positioning as well, so top would be T, and we could say 50 pixels, and the colon is optional, so we could say top 10, bottom 10. We can also set the display, so we could say display block by just typing DB, display inline, DI, display inline block, DIB. We could set width by just typing W and then the width. Same with height. We could set our text align, so TA and then left, right, or justify. So if we type J, it'll go to justify. We can do display none by typing DN, or display flex by typing DF. We can set our font family by typing FF, and by default that's serif. Or we can type FFA for Arial, Helvetica, that entire string. T would be Times New Roman, and V would be Verdana. We can set our font weight by typing FW, then we could type B for bold, or we could just type a number in here, 700. We can set the font style by typing FS, and we could type I for italic, or N for normal, or O for oblique. We can also set the font size by typing FZ, and then we could type in our size, 2E for 2EM. And we could also do combinations. So I could type PR for padding right, and then 15, and then I can use the plus symbol, and then margin left, and then 10, and that will set my padding right to 15 pixels and my margin left to 10 pixels. So there are a ton more CSS abbreviations, and you can check those out in the cheat sheet. Next, let's look at how to create custom Emmet snippets. So in VS Code, you can type Control comma, and that will bring up your settings, and then just do a search for Emmet. And you'll see here Emmet extensions path to a folder containing Emmet profiles and snippets. So what you'll have to do is create a folder anywhere in your computer, and within that folder, you'll need to create a file called snippets.json. So I've done that already. I created a folder in my F drive and under Emmet. And what you will have to do is restart VS Code. So just close it and open it back up. Then I'll close this, and I'm going to open up snippets.json file. And this is how it's laid out. So we have HTML and CSS. Within each, you'll have your snippets. And what you'll want to do is just name them and then enter the snippet. So this one, for instance, I've named NL, and that's going to create a nav menu for me. This one, ULL, is going to create a UL structure for me with the ID and class attributes. The $ curly braces 1 and $ curly braces 2 denotes tab stops. So let me show you how that works. In here, I could type ULL, enter, and it's going to automatically put my cursor in that first tab stop. Now I can type in my ID, and then if I hit tab, it will go to my second tab stop, and I can type in my class. And I hit tab again, it goes to my content. Tab again, goes to the next ID. And tab again goes to the next class, and so on. I'll demonstrate the other one, the NL, so I'll type NL, enter, and that created a nav menu for me. Back in the snippets, we have some CSS snippets. CB is going to create color black. BSD is going to create border, solid, and then we're going to have a tab stop here, but the default value is going to be red. Let me show you how these work. All right, I'll type CB, enter, and of course that was color black, very easy. The next one was BSD, so BSD, enter. It automatically moved my cursor and highlighted the color red. So now I can type any color. Now, if you are using any other code editor, you'll need to look at your documentation to see where the snippets.json file is located, and then simply edit it just as we did here. In your custom snippets.json file, you can even overwrite the default snippets. So if you want your HTML boilerplate to have specific entries, you could add a new snippet here, name it exclamation mark, and then enter the actual snippet here in the value. Once you start using Emmet, you'll never go back to writing code manually. It's such a time saver. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Emmet. That's going to be it for this video. If you made it to the end, thanks for watching. But before you go, if you liked this video, a thumbs up is appreciated. I upload new content every week, so hit subscribe and the bell to get notified. If my videos have helped you in any way and you have the means to do so, support me on Patreon. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at CodeStacker. Thanks for watching.